chair, please. March 27th.
All right.
No, it's not.
We know what we got? All right.
All those chairs.
Meeting will come to order. We have a quorum in the room. Members, please take your seats at the dais. Audience members, please silence your cell phones. If you have conversations, please excuse yourself, go outside in the hallway. And this will be the last HWI committee meeting before our crossover. We've got to clear our docket. We've got just a couple, pun intended, to go through today. I've received letters on a number of measures that we have pending before us that if the motion is not already to recommend, to report and refer to appropriations, if we have the letter, I'll let you know that at the appropriate time. Committee members, if we could begin this morning with Delegate Byron. Well, you know what, Delegate Byron, come on up, but as you're coming, I do want to acknowledge there's a group of fine-looking young folks right behind you there. I understand they are from Manchester High School. I'm sorry. Oh, they're over here too. They're all around. So if y'all would stand, we want to welcome you here this morning. It's very good to have you, and it's a great day to not be in school, isn't it? So thank y'all for coming, and to explain a little bit to y'all the process. Most all of the bills that you're going to be seeing presented this morning have been heard in subcommittee. If that's the case, then the subcommittee chairman will be presenting and recommending whatever the actions from the subcommittee was. Also, for y'all's benefit primarily, but you'll notice that I frequently don't ask for motions on amendments. I just say if there's no objection, we'll adopt it by general consensus. That is an appropriate parliamentary tool I frequently use. Also, any bill that comes from a subcommittee does not require a second on its recommendation, since it's from a subcommittee. It already has the assurance that more than one individual wanted the measure brought before us, so we can automatically take it up. That being said, Delegate Byron, good morning. Members, recall last meeting, this was on our docket. We had a couple amendments proposed. We kind of ran out of time, and the delegate wasn't able to be here, so we just took it by with no prejudice. But in case there were any questions about her amendments, we wanted her to be present. So give your attention, please. House Bill 2101. Delegate Bynum.
Mr. Chairman, just speaking directly to the amendments, these are the only ones that anyone brought to me that requested these amendments, and it's dealing with specifically with nursing homes, which is an area that isn't really affected.
Delegate Bynum, let Sarah go ahead and present the amendments.
Okay.
In case there are questions.
Okay, there are 4 line amendments to the bill. They're very similar to ones we heard last time, House Bill 2225. The first line amendment is on page 1, line 23, at the end of the line where it says as bad debt. Insert for a nursing home as defined in section 32.1-123. Charity care means care at a reduced rate to indigent persons. The second amendment is on page 3, line 171. After specialized care at the beginning of the new language, strike V and insert except in the case of nursing homes V. The third amendment is on page 4, line 211. Following applicant's service area at the beginning of the new language, again, strike V and insert except in the case of nursing homes V. And your fourth amendment on page 5, line 270. At the end of the new language, add the following sentence. Notwithstanding the foregoing, every nursing home as defined in section 32.1-123, for which a certificate of public need with conditions imposed pursuant to section 32.1-102.4 is issued, shall report data on utilization and other data in accordance with regulations of the board.
Members understand those amendments. There were several of them, the long and the short, just taking nursing homes out of the equation. If there's no objection, we'll adopt those amendments in a block. Hearing none, those amendments are properly attached and approved.
Move report.
This was before subcommittee where the recommendation was to report, as I recall. Any questions of the patron? Anyone in the audience will say anything would be at subcommittee care to come forward on the matter? The motion is to report as amended. Members, record your vote on the electronic board on the motion to report with amendments. All members voted who care to be recorded. Delegate Bynum, bill is reported 17 to nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Let's turn to subcommittee 3. If Delegate Bell is ready to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subcommittee 3, I believe I saw Delegate Klein here, so let me deal with House Bill 2264 first.
Members, give your attention to House Bill 2264.
This bill prohibits the Department of Health from spending any funds on abortion that is not qualified for matching funds under the Medicaid program, or providing any grants or other funds to any entity that performs such abortions. The bill prioritizes the types of entities that the Department of Health contracts with or provides grants to for family planning services. It was the recommendation of the subcommittee to report the bill on a 4-to-1 vote, and I would so move.
And committee members, this is not a issue that is new to us. If you've been here more than a year or two, it's also consistent with, I believe, budget language we have had in our budget for several years. It's pretty consistent with what federally has been called, I believe, the Hyde Amendment. So that is the policy before us. It was heard in subcommittee at some length. Any questions of the patron on the motion to recommend reporting? Anyone in the audience will be heard on House Bill 2264 before the committee takes action? Committee members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report. All members voted who care to be reported? Bill is reported 11 to 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Klein. Delegate Bell.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1944.
1944, please, committee.
Sets out additional procedures to be followed by the Department of Medical Assistance Services and the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services when promulgating certain regulations that apply to licensed providers. The bill also requires the Department of Planning and Budget conducting the economic impact analysis on proposed regulations of any agency subject to the Administrative Process Act to provide an opportunity for comment to a business or other entity to which a proposed regulation would apply regarding the anticipated economic impact of the proposed regulation. The bill provides that any such comment shall be considered by the Department of Planning and Budget and included in its economic impact. The bill contains technical amendments, Mr. Chairman. That is the summary of the original bill, I believe. There is a substitute, and I would move the substitute.
Second. Without objection, the amendment to substitute is adopted. Hearing none is properly before us. And Delegate Bell, we heard your recommendation to report. I will say that I have received communication from Chairman Jones that he would like to have this measure go upstairs. So the proper motion should be to report and refer to appropriations.
And Mr. Chairman, that was the recommendation of the subcommittee on a 5-0 vote. So moved.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Please use your request to speak. I say so. Anyway.
Well, it's about the vote, not that fast, and it won't work anymore.
Yes, you popped up for a second. Yes, your pop-up will work. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, the patron could explain what this bill does before I vote on it.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Sickles, thank you for the question. The bill, as it has been substituted, is a series of enactment clauses that were worked on in consultation with both DMAS and DVHDS, which will improve transparency and communication between these agencies and private providers when there are proposed new regulations, proposed changes to the provider manual, changes to licensure requirements, and specific contact between that community and these agencies when those actions are proposed. It also contains language that was part of a bill we've already passed in this House 1944, dealing specifically with the Department of Planning and Budget as they conduct their economic impact analyses.
Further questions of the patron? Anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 1944? Many members, the motion is to report and refer to appropriations. Record your vote on the board. A motion to report and refer. Dr. O'Bannon, how would you care to be reported? Thank you. All members voted to care to be recorded. The bill is reported and referred 18-0. Delegate Bell.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2041. There's also a substitute for this bill. I would move the substitute.
Without objection, the amended nature of the substitute is adopted. Hearing none is properly before us.
Mr. Chairman, since there's a substitute, I would call on the patron who just joined us, Delegate Murphy, to summarize for us.
Boy, that was good time.
Good morning, Delegate Murphy.
Good morning. There was an amendment in the form of a substitute, so I have this. This is the TANA scholarship program we're trying to set up with the community colleges or through the community colleges. The purpose of the program is to provide access to post-secondary educational opportunities to students living in poverty. When we set up this pilot program, it would be for 3 years, be run by the community college system. They would be making the choices of the students based on them meeting the TANF eligibility requirements and, of course, their performance in school. We worked very hard with the community college system to put this together so that you know it will be administered by them and not by social services. It's expected that the program could fund at least 200 students with a maximum of $4,000 per year, the funds being paid directly to the college system. They would start with 2 colleges, one urban, one rural. We believe that this provides a pathway out of poverty. We know this because our community colleges, Mr. Chairman, provide a pathway to a four-year institution. And so we're really thinking that this is one really good way to use rolled over or TANF funds that are available and will be rolled over. And so it really, it will depend, the real cost on how many students are chosen that first year. And we're
Delegate Bell, I correct the unanimous subcommittee recommendation. We agreed with the policy and recommended reporting, but referring to appropriations, because since it does involve the reallocation of TANF monies, we need to go upstairs.
So moved. Second.
So the recommendation from subcommittee is to report and refer. That is the motion properly before the committee. Any questions of the patron? Anyone in the audience to be heard on 2041 on the motion to report and refer to appropriations before we take action?
Chair.
Delegate Bell.
Just so I know what the money's coming out of, I understand it's an unallocated pool. What other things could this be spent on that is going to be spent on this instead?
So that was kind of the rationale behind sending it up to appropriations, to make sure that we weren't going to be otherwise jeopardizing other programs that currently receive TANF monies.
Okay, but my expectation is it'll come up with our imprimatur and there's a pot of money and they'll spend it. Is there somebody, I guess look at Doc. If that's not the process, then that's fine. Somebody will at least do the way, it sounds great. I'm sure everything else that they're going to spend the money on sounds great. I just don't, somebody ought to have it both in front of them and say, yes, it's great, but this one's greater. If not us, that's fine.
Well, I think we're looking at a number of ways to use TANF funds. There are four specific things you can use them for. There are other things that we're also looking at, so I think this could be part of the next update.
But there'll be some conversation.
I'm sorry, conversations about hierarchy of how those funds are spent.
I retroactively asked for permission to ask the question that he just answered. Thank you.
And for the folks in the audience as well, the students in particular. What we're doing at this juncture is this committee is concurring with the underlying policy, but because this committee does not have the authority to spend the money, because there is a fiscal implication potential, that's why it's going up to the Appropriations Committee with our recommendation on the policy, but then they have to be the final arbiters. Is there money to actually affect this policy? So that's why we're operating in this fashion, and that's why the motion has been made as it was. Further discussion on the motions? And members, please record your vote on the board to report and refer to appropriations. All members voted who care to be recorded. Vote is reported and referred 18-0. Delegate Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2119, Delegate King was the patron. This is, there is an amendment. Sarah, it's a line amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Chairman, there was a line amendment that came out of the subcommittee consideration, and since then,
Some things are in the proper posture, Delegate Bell. May I ask that we recommend the subcommittee amendments, the adoption of them. Without objection, they will be adopted. Are we not in the posture that the subcommittee recommended reporting, but since subcommittee, we have had additional individuals come forward who weren't available to be with us the evening of the subcommittee. And so that's why the amendments are coming forward now, and they are with the concurrence of the patron, so he's the one offering these amendments.
That would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Delegate. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Sarah, you first.
Yeah, to begin with, your line amendment that was adopted in subcommittee, page 3, line 124, after performed by A, insert properly trained.
And we have already adopted that amendment.
Right, and then 2 additional line amendments have been proposed. The first of those line amendments is on page 3, line 125, after osteopathic medicine, the beginning of the line there. Insert or a physician assistant as authorized pursuant to section 54.1-2952, or a nurse practitioner as authorized pursuant to section 54.1-2957. The third line amendment will insert that same language about physician assistants and nurse practitioners on line 126, following osteopathic medicine as well.
And Delegate King, whether it be correct, the purpose of these amendments are to make clear that nurse practitioners or physician assistants who both operate operate under the authority of a physician who have been properly trained in how to do this procedure, may similarly perform these laser hair removal procedures.
Mr. Chairman, that's absolutely true, and the only reason why we weren't able to address this earlier in the subcommittee is as we were looking at the report that came from the Virginia Health Professions as well as D4 that addressed this issue. They studied this for a year. Their language included nursing and such. We just, for our language purposes, we thought that might capture all of it, but just to be absolutely clear that we are talking about these
Without
professionals who are
objection,
trained.
we'll adopt those proposed amendments. Hearing none, they're properly before us. The subcommittee recommendation was to report. Now on the further amended bill, is there any discussion or questions of the patron? Any testimony or questions from the audience? The motion is to
Move
report.
report as amended.
Members record your vote on the board. Motion to report. If all members voted, who care to be recorded? Delegate Pease, who is obviously, has laser hair removal pending.
Well, that's too much information, Mr. Chairman.
There we go. So it's reported 17 to 9.
Mr. Chairman, thanks to all the subcommittee members for your efforts.
18. Don't see 19.
Freshman.
All right. Mr. Chairman.
Learn to use a machine, freshman.
Let's get Harry. Let's
That
get
was a
Harry.
smooth move. I'm just saying. Folks, we do have some fun around here. Delegate Bell.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2215, Delegate Toscano, this is a clean bill as far as I know. It moves the requirement that a child be a citizen or legal resident of the United States from the definition of a child with special needs to the eligibility criteria for the adoptive parents of such child to receive adoption assistance. The bill modifies the exception to the eligibility requirement that efforts be made to place the child in an adoptive home without the provision of adoption assistance to include consideration of the child's best interest due to factors such as the child's development of significant emotional ties with its foster parents while in their care, provided that the foster parents wish to adopt the child. Under current law, the exception is limited to situations in which the child has developed emotional ties with its foster parents and the foster parents wish to adopt the child. The bill modifies other requirements for a child with special needs to receive certain types of adoption assistance and for a child who is between the ages of 18 and 21 to receive adoption assistance. The bill also provides that a representative of the Department of Social Services shall negotiate all adoption assistance agreements with both existing and prospective adoptive parents on behalf of local departments of social services. It was the recommendation of the subcommittee to report the bill on a 5-0 vote, and I would so move.
Three members here, the motion pending before us. Is there anyone in the audience who cares to be heard on the matter of House Bill 2215? If there are no questions, committee members record your vote on the board on the motion to report.
I'm trying.
I know.
Light, that was real light.
Okay. Matters reported 19 to nothing. Delegate Bell, have you further?
House Bill 2216, Mr. Chairman, Delegate Toscano, once again. This changes the name of Putative Father Registry to the Virginia Birth Father Registry and modifies certain registration and notice provisions associated with such registry. It was the recommendation of the subcommittee to report the bill on a 5-0 vote. I would so move, and I would ask that you not ask me to explain Putative Father Registry.
The effect of this legislation is largely just technical changes within our code section. The motion is to report. If there's no discussion from the audience or from the committee, members record your vote on the board on the motion to report. All members voted. Who cares to be reported? There we go. That matter is reported 19 to nothing. Delegate Bell, have you nothing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the next bill is House Bill 2258, and there is a substitute.
Without objection, we'll adopt the amendment in the nature of substitute that's already been distributed to the committee. Without objection, that matter is now adopted.
Mr. Chairman, this bill originally directed the Secretary of Health and Human Resources together with the Secretary of Public Safety to convene a task force to raise public awareness of suicide and increase suicide prevention education. I don't see the patron in the room.
What would be fair to say, Delegate, the original measure was creating a new task force and had fiscal implications. The amendment nature of the substitute that we have adopted is what's called a Section 1 bill that will require the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services just to let us know, under their current existing statutory powers, what they have been able to do in this area.
Mr. Chairman, I would say that it is quite accurate.
And because it's just having the department tell us what they're doing, it has no fiscal implications. So that's why I want you to go and change.
That's correct, and the recommendation from the subcommittee was to report the substitute on a 5-0 vote. I would so move.
Any questions from the committee? And from the audience, we heard on the substitute language of House Bill 2258. Committee members record their vote on the board on the motion to report the substitute.
Good.
There we go.
Roy?
The folks in the audience were having some technical difficulties. Please do not adjust your screen. All right. All those in favor of House Bill 2258 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So the clerk can now record the matter unanimously to all members present. 2258 is reported. Delegate Bell, have you done?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2477, I believe the chairman is the patron. This bill was reported from the subcommittee with amendments. Sarah?
There are 3 line amendments to this bill. The first line amendment, page 1, line 12, following steps 2, strike eliminate and insert begin eliminating. Second line amendment, page 1 on line 27. Following the 6 at the beginning of the line, strike separate and insert consider separating. And the final amendment will add a second enactment clause to the bill at the end of line, following the end of line 37, that reads, 2, that the Department of Health shall report on its progress in implementing the provisions of this act and any recommendations or statutory, regulatory, policy, or budgetary changes that may be necessary to implement the provisions of this act to the Secretary of Health and Human Resources and the Chairman of the House Committee on Health, Welfare, and Institutions and Senate Committee on Education and Health by November 1, 2017.
Does everybody understand the proposed amendments? Along the short, it would make a little softer transition on the department going forward in implementing some of these recommendations, and also have them come back to the General Assembly next fall to tell us the progress in the implementation and any problems that they have incurred. Without objection, without those amendments proposed by the subcommittee, hearing none, they're properly adopted. And Delegate one, I'll explain the long and the short of this measure. As the committee members may recall, last year, due to my legislation, we had a study done among the various stakeholders in the Department of Health as it related to the issues surrounding on-site sewage systems, evaluation, design, approval. This is something that the building community is very interested in. We've also, of course, got the public health interests that have to be preserved, so they were very involved in the process and led the study. And what you see before you are 8 of the 20 recommendations that came from that work group. These are the 8 of those 20 that could be affected without legislative changes, and this just puts things in a posture. And I would draw your attention in particular to a couple of them, especially where we make clear that where a conventional sewage system may be available, the engineer has to communicate that to the landowner along with any other potential options. That was a consumer protection issue. And we've also got the Department of Health will have to stay as the arbiter of health protection of our citizens.
Any questions on the matter? The subcommittee recommendation was to report as amended, as I recall.
That's correct,
So
Mr.
that is
Chairman,
the
on
motion
5
before the
nothing.
committee. Anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 2477 before the committee takes action? Any questions or discussion from the committee? The motion is to report as amended. Members, record your vote on the board. Or not. Starting to come, All right, all members in favor of reporting House Bill 2477 signify. We're going to ignore what's on the board because right now the system's not working. Thank you. And we're going to be going to the clerk to just make note. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. That they'll make note of any that are absent, but that way all members who are present, that there were no negative votes. Yeah, there were no negative votes, just count all present as voting aye. Paper sometimes has to default over technology. So we're doing
Now it's recorded.
Now it comes up.
Mr. Chairman,
I hear somebody.
down here, my request to speak button will not line up either, so.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, when the vote's open to blow from, yeah, we're still in the twist in between. Okay. Hi there, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. If I might interrupt the process just for a minute, we've been joined by a group of some special guests from Roanoke, from the Jefferson College of Health Sciences. We've got here a group of nursing students and would like to welcome them to our proceedings this morning. And
if y'all want to stand,
know about
somebody can
that.
recognize you, properly welcome you down. Thank you for your travel from the Star City. All righty, Delegate Bell.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
And I guess officially I didn't announce, House Bill 2477 was reported unanimously from full committee. Delegate O'Bannon, I believe Subcommittee 1 had a measure. Delegate Cox, I'm sorry, you're there, and your measure has not been through subcommittee. So if you would present, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I have House Bill 1845.
Members, give your attention to House Bill 1845, and I believe the delegate is proposing an amendment made to the substitute, which has already been distributed, so members should have had time to see it without objection. That is properly adopted. Hearing none is properly before us. Delegate Cox.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. This bill basically came out of an idea. I mean, obviously, all of us are very concerned with what's going on with the heroin and opioid problems. And we were trying to look for some model programs, especially in our jails. And Sheriff Carl Leonard is here today. I'm going to be very brief, so if he can just speak for a second, Mr. Chairman. I think he has a tremendous program called HARP. And it's a heroin addiction recovery program. And I know Delegate Bell and several of us actually went down to see the program. We met probably with 50 men who were in the program. It's a voluntary program, but we were extremely impressed. And instead of reinventing the wheel, we thought, wow, if we had 3 or 4 other sheriff's offices do this as a pilot, and obviously the language has enough flexibility, hopefully, that they can make some changes, but really what the substitute does differently is it sort of pins it down that we need to look at state models. I think the way it was originally written, and the chairman was nice enough to work with him on the language, it was broad enough where I think the agency thought they had to go ahead and find a national law. That's not what we're after. And so we were very impressed with the program. I think we want to do programs that work. So with that, can I give maybe Sheriff Leonard a second to describe the program? I think he's done a tremendous job, and then I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Thompson. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, member of the committee. I first began law
Just
enforcement.
identify yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Carl Leonard, I'm sheriff in Chesterfield County. Prior to being sheriff, I was a police officer, started my career in 1980. and worked the road through the 80s during the cocaine evolution. In the 90s it was crack, 2000s it was synthetic drugs and meth. But I've never seen anything like heroin, what heroin's done in our county and in our state and our nation. And whatever vision you have of a heroin addict, I can tell you that vision is not accurate anymore. The face of a heroin addict is the face of everybody in this room, and anybody in this room. It's a very destructive, very addictive drug. It's not just shot up anymore by needle, it's taken by pill form, it can be snorted, and it can be smoked as well. 4 different methods of delivery to the system. It's very easy to get, very inexpensive to get, and it's in our middle schools today, and it's everywhere. So I realized that we had to do more, and I was actually part of the problem. Jails have always been a great place to detox somebody. We do a fantastic job getting somebody to come through the withdrawal and get clean. But what I've turned loose out of my jail were sober addicts. And when they went into the jail, they made a 2 gram a day habit, a 2.5 gram a day habit. And when they left my jail, when they go back to get that first hit again, they went back to the same amount they needed, or thought they needed, when in fact their body only required about a 0.5 gram, and they were dying. So I was actually part of the problem myself. So on March 8th, when the 10th person died in Chesterfield County with heroin addict, we decided we had to do something different, that what we were doing wasn't working and hasn't worked for 100 years. So we launched our heroin addiction recovery program. And I hate to say this out loud, but the only way to make this program work is to break the rules and throw the rule book out, because what we've been doing hasn't worked. Our program is very intensive. It's a voluntary program to get in. And I will tell you, nobody wants to recover from heroin more than the heroin addict. The fact is that there's very little on the outside society for them to go to get help to. Affordable, community-based recovery programs just don't exist. And unfortunately, we've arrested our way out of it and they end up in jails. So we knew we had to do more. We created our heroin program. It's a very intense, multifaceted program. It has a peer-to-peer element that deals with the 12 steps of recovery through Narcotics Anonymous. We also bring in licensed counselors to deal with trauma-based addictions. Most addicts have some type of trauma in their life that has initiated this void, which is filled by the use of drugs. We also bring in an expert who deals with an exit plan. You know, where do you go when you leave the jail? Where are you going to get your money? Where are you going to sleep? What are you going to do for a job? The problem is most of these folks cannot go back home. In an addict's life, there's 3 things you need to change if you're going to succeed in recovery: people, places, and things. Unfortunately, when it's your parents who are shooting up with you, you can't go back home to your parents, or sometimes your wife, or sometimes your husband. So we're working on an exit plan, trying to find some place for them to go once they get released that doesn't put them back into that environment. It's a very intensive program, as I say. One of the other things we do, which is very unique in this country, is once you get released, you're welcome to come back into jail every day to maintain your program. We have about 20 people a day coming off the street into the back of the jail to continue participating in this program. I've had people come back to the jail and ask to spend the night to stay in that recovery group, and I've let them do it. And we've also told them that any time after they get released they feel the urge to use, give us a call, we'll come pick them up, and we'll get them to a recovery place before they go to their next hit, heroin. Because that next hit most likely will be the failed hit. So we're trying to do this multifaceted program. We are breaking all the rules because you have to. What we've been doing for 100 years hasn't worked. That's a definition of insanity. And our program, we feel, has been very successful because of the intensive program, the ability for them to keep coming back to the program after they get released. Ours is pre-sentence as well as post-sentence. And that's one of the differences with a lot of programs you see is you have to be post-sentence. And ours lets you in day 1 when you come into the jail. If you're a heroin addict and need help, we bring you in even prior to your pretrial. I can go on. I know my time is limited, but if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, please.
We thank you and thank all your colleagues for your service to citizens of Chesterfield and all the Commonwealth, and especially you're looking outside the box to find a real solution to the problem, not just put a Band-Aid. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to leave you with this. These aren't bad people trying to get good. They're sick people trying to get well. And addiction is a disease we need to address. Thank you.
Any questions of Sheriff Leonard?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
A question for the sheriff. Thank you for being here. Your testimony. I know in my jurisdiction of Arlington County, we have what we call, it's called the ACT unit, and I don't know what ACT stands for. It's a program just like this. Unfortunately, it has a 6-month waiting list because of the cost.
Do you have any sense on what a program like this costs? But it is extremely effective. And people that are leaving, hopefully they're getting straight and able to deal with it. Do you know the cost of putting on a program?
Our program is on the low end estimated about $76,000 a year. I don't even count the salaries of the deputies who are dedicated to it. But one of the things we realized on March 8th when we started this was we can't wait for funding. We can't wait for legislation. We can't wait to get through bureaucracy. We just had to do this. And we took the funds out of existing funds, sacrificing some other areas to make this happen because we just couldn't wait any longer.
Good for you. Thank you.
Dr. Bell?
Sheriff, when we visited, one of the issues was over time you'll have more and more graduates, and at some point they will outgrow the ability to kind of do it as part of the jail. One of our issues up here is the longer term. What do we do once they get out of the immediate supervision? Do you have any thoughts on that, or how to transition to a more transitional step?
In Chesterfield County, one of the things we're doing is actually reconstruction inside the jail. We're going to gut a couple rooms and make an open room for people on the outside to come in. This is actually going to be a community-based program. Because there is a lack of programs in the community, we're going to run one out of what used to be our visitation center. We've gone to video visitation. We're going to gut out the old visitation room and actually make that a recovery center where people can come off the street every day without going to the back of the jail. But we do need more assets and resources in our communities.
All right, the long and the short of this legislation, Delegate Cox, has no fiscal implications, but basically let Chesterfield do legally what they've been doing for some time. So there is the measure before us.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, even though it doesn't really, I do have a budget amendment in for four other localities to model this program. And I've given, obviously, them some seed money. They would have to obviously put some skin in the game too, but that's my other desire. If I can get this on the books, and I can get some pilots going. So,
Delegate Price, you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate everything I've heard. I just have a question about the legislation. Would this only be for heroin addiction, or it would be for some of the other addictions that some of our other areas are experiencing as well?
I think it's broad. It says existing addiction recovery programs. So I think the language is probably broad-based enough to include other things. Obviously, that's sort of the focus. And the reason it doesn't say, obviously, Chesterfield specifically, because we know, to Delegate Hope's point, you can have similar state programs that sure might want to do a little bit differently, but we obviously have some principles in here, so it's broad enough base, I think, to give some flexibility in both of those areas.
Move report substitute.
And Delegate Cox, because we haven't had this matter before, so there are others in the audience who would like to be heard on House Bill 1844, either in support or opposition before the committee takes action. Motion properly made and seconded to report as amended. Any further discussion from the committee? Committee members record your vote on the board on the motion to report as a substitute. Fingers crossed. Or not. Not so much. I think the board's working now. Members, try again. You haven't. All right, Delegate Vicky Bell, Delegate Garrett, both aye.
Aye.
Aye. Delegate Stolly, aye. Keep trying your buttons.
Aye. Delegate Hope.
Delegate Bell, try again. Oh, okay. All right. All members voted and care to be recorded. Again, is aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It takes longer sometimes than others, Delegate Cox. It goes reported 20 to nothing. And Delegate Stolly, I believe you had the subcommittee 2 report. Could you take that up, please? Does Delegate Bell have completed subcommittee 3's report, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Up first on our docket for Subcommittee 2 was Delegate Hope's background checks exceptions. What this allows is that if 10 years has elapsed
Number
since...
1491, please.
If, I believe there's an amendment to this.
Mr. Chair, the amendment is on page 4, line 196, after position period A, strike provider, insert community services board.
Everybody understands the amendment proposed by subcommittee? Hearing no objections, that amendment is properly adopted.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1491 allows that if 10 years have elapsed since the conviction of a misdemeanor dealing with simple assault and battery or assault and battery against a family member, that individual may be employed in direct care position or as a provider in an in-home sponsored residential service. The subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I move.
Any comment from the audience on House Bill 1491 before the committee acts on the motion to report as amended? Any discussion from the committee members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So I just want to make sure I understand, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman. So this basically is going to say that folks need, if they've been longer than 10 years out, they're now eligible to serve in these functions.
That is correct.
Okay. And it's consistent, as I recall, Delegate Stolle, with what we had done in other areas. This was basically just kind of left out. We had done this, I believe, last year or 2 years ago.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Bell.
Could we go by just for a minute so I can pull it up on the screen? I'm having trouble with the screen.
All right. Take it by temporarily.
I'd like to read it.
All right, Delegate Stolle, you have another from the subcommittee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Hope's bill, House Bill 1508, requires the Commissioner of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. They are currently required to report critical incidents and deaths that occur in its facilities. This bill adds that critical incidents and deaths that occur in any of its programs will be reported. The subcommittee voted to report and refer to appropriations 6-0, and I so move.
Anyone in the audience? We have an amendment. Could we hear the amendments, please?
Mr. Chair, there are 4 amendments. The first is on page 1, line 34, after the known facts of, insert parentheses, I, parentheses, i.e. clause 1. Second amendment is on page 1, line 34, after critical incidents, insert comma, as that term is defined in section 37.2-7 and 9.1, comma. Third amendment is on page 1, line 35, after receiving services in facilities, strike or insert, and clause 2, serious injuries, as that term is defined in board regulations, or deaths of individuals receiving services in. The fourth and final amendment is on page 1, line 36, after of the critical incident, insert, comma, serious injury, comma.
And the effect of those amendments is to clarify that not just a boo-boo, shall we say, but it has to be a serious injury that it is defined in code before it has to be reported. Without objection, we'll adopt those amendments. Hearing none, they're properly adopted. Delegate Garrett, question or discussion?
I do, Mr. Chairman, or for the delegate, for the patient. Delegate Hope, what is, I understand the current law. It strikes me there are a lot of programs operated or licensed by DBHDS. And I just want to make sure we don't have a lot of unintended consequences that we are requiring and sort of placing an undue burden on them now trying to understand the sort of scope of this. What's the problem we're trying to address or the specific impetus for your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's some people here that collect this data currently that's coming in. Now that we have people that are leaving institutions and going into the community, we also want to track that information as well. They can detect patterns to see if there's any serious injuries or deaths going on in areas outside those facilities, and they might be able to intervene. This is not a burden on the provider. This is only directed to the department to provide that information.
Delegate Hope, would it not be correct that what this matter does, it doesn't require the department to collect any different data than we're currently getting. It just now allows that data to be shared with the Disability Law Center. That's correct.
So, Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
So I guess I just want to make sure. Doug Hope had mentioned, group homes and so forth, and I assume critical incidents is somewhere defined in this code. Going forward, any critical incident, whatever that's defined, even in group homes, any of these other licensed facilities are now going to have to be within 15 days reported to somebody.
And that's under current law. That's correct.
Nothing changes about the current reporting requirements on the facility. This is just having the department now communicate the data they have received to the Disability Law Center.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Further questions on the matter? Anyone in the audience to be heard on House Bill 1508 before the committee takes action? Committee members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report as amended. Yeah, refer. I'm sorry, report and refer, my apologies.
I'm massaging it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Delegate Rob Bell is a yay. Delegate Peace?
Yay.
Also yay.
You got it. Delegate Robinson, aye. The measure is supported 21 to 9. Thank you. All right, Delegate Staley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill up is House Bill 1786, which is my bill. There is a subcommittee substitute.
All right, without objection, we'll adopt the amendment named for the substitute that has been distributed to the members. Hearing none, the substitute for House Bill 1786 is properly before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 786 addresses in utero exposure to controlled substances. The current law says that if an infant is born with a substance exposure, that has to currently be reported to Child Protective Services. However, if the mother is currently in a treatment program, that file is closed and there's no follow-up on that. This bill simply allows Child Protective Services to take into a family assessment on those children born to moms resulting in a infant exposure that are already in treatment.
Any questions of the patron on House Bill 1786 on the recommendation to report as amended? Anyone in the audience to be heard on the matter? Something would be in subcommittee. Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I believe this would be a report and refer.
Okay.
There is a fiscal impact is in the governor's budget. However, I think the population wants to look at
So the
this.
proper motion then should be to report and refer as the substitute. Committee members trying to record the agree on the board. Any moment? Or not? Delegate Dickey Bell, aye. Aye. Delegate Levine, aye. Debbie Chris, okay. Bill is supported 21 to 9. Delegate Stump, is there another?
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
All right, Delegate Bell, are you satisfied 1491? Can you bring the matter back before us? Committee members, House Bill 1491, we were in the posture of voting, getting it back before us. Maybe. Okay. Clerk? Mr. Clerk, if you could pull up the paper copy vote on 1491 and mark the committee members were operating now without the electronic type technology. Fortunately, I've been here way before electricity was invented, so it's okay. So, on the matter of 1491, as you recall, that was Delegate Hope's bill on background check exceptions. All those in favor of reporting House Bill 1491 as amended, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, nay. The matter is reported unanimously, 21 to 9. All righty, committee members, we're now going to measures. We have one still left in the subcommittee, but we're going to get the patron here before we take that up. If you would, I get my proper sheet book, please. Matters coming before a full committee. Delegate Hugo is not here. We'll save that until the end. Let's go ahead, members. Senate Bill 1031, Senator Marsden. That measure is identical to a House bill. It has an emergency clause, and candidly, we're taking it up at this juncture. This is the measure that will allow current state employees
DFS to have Narcan in the facilities in order to be able to handle exposure circumstances, and we want to give them that authority sooner rather than later. So Senate Bill 1031, do I hear a motion?
Second.
Moved properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1031 that is identical to a measure we've acted on previously. Mr. Clerk, are you ready to take a vote on 1031? Oh, you're ready, okay. All those in favor of reporting Senate Bill 1031, signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? Matter is reported, 21 to nothing. All right, we got another bill coming. House Bill 1837 is my bill. I'm going to ask Dr. O'Bannon if he would assume the role of chair. 1837.
Okay. Members of the committee, please turn your attention to House Bill 1837.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 1837, as you may recall, was a matter that I asked the committee to take up Tuesday to adopt a substitute so that the public would have access to the language of that substitute for 2 days before we took any action here this morning. The long and the short of this measure, because when we took it up Tuesday, I didn't explain it. The long and the short of the objective of this measure is we've currently got certain minimal exceptions that extend to entities that are operating educational programs that are accredited by the Department of Education, but they still have some form of daycare licensure that they're subject to, but we don't subject anything in our public school systems to such licensure as well. The objective of this measure is to put a private teaching institution that is accredited with accreditation approved by DOE in the same posture as we put our public school setting students. We make clear in the substitute, in particular language that was agreed to by all parties, suggested by DSS, I draw your attention to page 4 of the substitute, lines 103, 104, that in the event these learning facilities are keeping students for longer than a 5-hour period, then they will still have to be licensed. But what this will allow them to do would be, for instance, a half-day educational program allowing an hour or so for naps. And that they would, what this will do is make them exempt from licensure. I would say to the committee, part of my premise in doing this as well, and talking with DSS, is given that we know they've already got more they can say grace over with the personnel and resources they have. To me, it just made sense that these are educational programs and not child daycare programs by their very nature. That we needed to be able to authorize DSS to focus on the true daycare setting that is more appropriately under their purview. There are those in the audience who would speak to the matter if the committee wishes, and there are those there to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Delegate Orrick. Any members of the committee have any questions to start with? Any members of the public wish to testify for or against this substitute?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Matthew Stanley, representing the Virginia Council for Private Education. We represent the state's accredited private schools. We appreciate working with Delegate Orrick on this bill and other stakeholders. We really see this as a technical cleanup for a section of code that really hasn't seen any amendments since it was enacted in about 1993 to bring it up to current day practices. We're happy to explain any of the other technical amendments with it, but Delegate Orrick did a fine job explaining it. So we're here to offer any further explanation needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Anybody in opposition? All right. Is there a motion? Nobody, please. All right. All right. So there's a properly seconded motion to report the substitute to House Bill 1837. Cross your fingers and press your buttons. That bill reports. Aye. 20 to 0. Thanks. And Delegate Orrick has another bill on the docket. That's House Bill 2304. I think there's a substitute, and we have a technical line amendment to 2304. Members will pay attention.
The technical amendment is on page 2 of the substitute. line 52, after for recipients of strike institution.
All right, that's an objection. We will adopt that and ask Delegate Orrock to explain this bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 2304 comes to us to largely try and embrace a number of the JLARC recommendations as it relates to the Medicaid screening process and administration of that program. In JLARC, we saw there were tremendous disparities in individuals that were screened and found to be eligible for services and those that were not, depending on the jurisdiction that they lived in. There were some problems, I think social service would readily admit, within the proper use of the uniform screening criteria. This measure, you will notice I have never seen a bill, frankly, that had as many enactment clauses as this one did. Mr. Chairman, I would say that, as you may recall, this is a matter that I had announced week and a half ago, that I was going to be setting a specific time to meet with any and all stakeholders who wanted to come together on this matter. We had in the room representatives from JLARC, from DMAS, and many within the stakeholder community of insurance and providers. I will say that there is not unanimity in these enactment code language changes, but I would say on those that there was not agreement, that may very well be equal displeasure. I will also say that the game's not over. I think everybody recognizes if this matter is to be affirmatively considered policy-wise by the committee, we'll have to go upstairs because there are fiscal implications involved. And when folks upstairs, my learned friends, who might need to invite in others, that they may see fiscal issues that may need to be resolved in this language. And then it goes to the Senate if it comes out from up there. So there's where we stand. But I hope the committee will look favorably upon this measure, and I hope the committee will report and refer to appropriations.
Thank you very much, Delegate Orrock. And I'll just remind folks that Delegate Orrock is actually the chairman of JLARC this year. So he was driving the bus when we heard this report, and he's done a lot of work with the stakeholders. As we modernize and reform the process, it is going to cost us some money, and I think those of us upstairs realize that, and we may need to do a little more fine-tuning, but he's done a great job getting the stakeholders together, and I'm certainly supporting it. Any members of the committee have any comments? Doug, ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'm glad to see this measure coming forward. I do notice, though, that what is now renumbered to paragraph A in this section is actually what was the substance of my House Bill 702 from about 3 years ago. And I'm just wondering if anyone is available from the department who might let me know if they have finally gotten around to contracting with the agencies that code requires them to contract with, or if they continue to just ignore the law that is reported.
So is that a rhetorical question, or we?
Somewhat. I can pull that back. But.
Chair, you go see him. Go see him. All right, Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the patron. Yes, sir. Chairman Orrock, how does this track with JLARC's recommendations? Are there something that we're leaving off? I know you mentioned that there's some people got together. I'm wondering if there's things that are missing that you wish had been on here. How does this differ?
The long and the short, if you look at the original legislation, yes, there are some changes. That what I introduced was basically 100% of what JLARC recommended. In the process of coming to consensus, JLARC acknowledged there were certain things that were more important than others and tried to focus on the highest priorities to achieve the greatest efficiency, yet still providing the services to the needed population. This is a tremendous financial obligation on the Commonwealth, and my objective throughout, and I think the stakeholders in the meetings would agree that my objective first and foremost was ensuring the proper care of the patients eligible under this program. But that being said, how can we do that in the most cost-effective manner? Mr. Chairman, if I may as well, in furtherance, I neglected earlier, I do want to extend personal appreciation to all the stakeholders involved in this.
They wrestled mightily with a number of these, and I wasn't there always to referee the match. But I didn't see any blood when they came back in the room, so I commend them for their proper comedy and working together. And as I said, it's not done. There's still going to be, I think, some further tweaks. But I'm comfortable that we're preserving the integrity of patient care to this needy population, but trying to do so most cost effectively for the citizens of the Commonwealth.
Thank you. So seeing no more requests to speak, I think the proper motion would be to recommend report and refer to appropriations. I move.
Okay.
All right. Any other comment? All right. Please try again.
That's it.
Bell is here and he's going. Okay, your bill, close the roll. The bill reports 20-0.
Thank you, Dr. O'Bannon. Delegate Ed, did you care to take up your measure now, or just wanted to go by for the day?
Well, Mr. Chairman, this measure intended to just simply codify federal code, but I think that there are enough things that we still don't have right in it, and I think we're running out of time, so we could just let it go by for the day and...
Without objection, House Bill 2408 by for the day. All righty. That leaves one measure before us. Dr. O'Bannon. Yeah, this goes up. Yeah, okay, that way. Go ahead. You're doing great. Go ahead. Oh, no, yes. That was left. Okay. The docket in error shows House Bill 2407. That was not affirmatively recommended from subcommittee. That was left within the bosom. And so that matter is not properly on our docket this morning.
So, finishing sub 1, you see before you House Bill 2404, which was heard in subcommittee with a recommendation to report. This sets up an advisory council in the executive branch of government somewhere to study the issue of PANDAS and PANS, which is a neuroautoimmune condition. The bill actually provides for legislative and non-legislative members and anticipates funding them for their trips. It's been picked up by the staff upstairs, so I think we will need to have it at least go up, and I will let Delegate Philipore know that. But the subcommittee report was to recommend, and so it's on the list, and I would move that we recommend reporting and refer to appropriations.
Thank you, Dr. O'Bannon. And for the committee's full understanding and disclosure, when the subcommittee heard this matter, the actual fiscal impact that we had gotten said there was none. However, on further examination, clearly, anytime you establish a new advisory committee that has compensation for the members who serve on that, it's got fiscal implications. Towards that end, I will further add, under that premise, the House Rules Committee took up no new study matters this session. But as a subcommittee, we agreed with the policy. And so the premise and the motion before us would be to report and refer, reflecting two appropriations that the Health Committee agrees with the policy hereby embodied, and we hope that they can find the financial resources to make it a reality.
And I'll just further comment, what I will let Dr. Philipore know is that when this comes up upstairs, that we will need somebody from the administration to stand up and say they will not take any, they can do this within their existing budget from some agencies.
Right. Delegate Sickles. Okay. Any further questions or discussion from the committee? Anyone in the audience to heard on House Bill 2404 on the motion to report and refer? If not, committee members, record your vote on the board on the motion to report and refer to appropriations. Delegate Yost is not here. Okay, the matter is reported and referred 21-0, and let's give a hoorah. The board worked that time like it should. Committee members, that completes our docket on time before crossover. A big hoorah to all the committee members and especially my subcommittee chairs. In keeping with what we've done in past sessions, I appreciate your help and hopeful that the process I've adopted of utilizing Tuesday, Thursday, after full committee for subcommittees and work well, which I'll thank the board. Yay, man. Okay. With that, my appreciation to all, and we'll see you next Tuesday, well, next Thursday. Get Tuesday off. Yay. Committee will rise.
That